Hi, I'm Patrick Cobb with AARP South Carolina. We're pleased to be a sponsor of the Charleston Post and Courier's Pints and Politics series. AARP is a nonprofit organization, so we don't endorse candidates. For more information, go to aarp.org/SC.
All right, welcome back. In case you just joined us, I'm Autumn Phillips, managing editor of the Post and Courier, and this is a virtual Pints and Politics where we're talking about the U.S. House race. We just had Adair Ford Burrows on for 45 minutes. We took a pause, and now Joe Wilson is here to join us. He's going to be talking to Skylar Croft, our political editor, and Jamie Lovegrove, our politics reporter here in Columbia.
Congressman, good to see you again.
Skylar, it's great to be with you.
Yes, safe from the COVID. I understand we talked about this before, that you grew up in Charleston and
Yes.
delivering something called the Old News and Courier.
Well, no. It was the Evening Post.
Evening Post. So you did the afternoon paper.
Yes.
The afternoon, okay.
My first job, my entry-level job.
Tell us about your days as a carrier. What was it like? What headlines do you remember? What were you paid? How much did you do for doing a route?
It was not minimum wage, but hey, Skylar, it was really meaningful. It was on King Street, and so at that time in the 1960s, you had stores, but you also had people who lived in houses behind the stores, particularly people of age, people of color. It was really an introduction to me to meet people of all kinds. And then I did meet a notable. One time I was at Freilich Shoe Store and met Virginia Russell, who ultimately became the First Lady of South Carolina. And I got involved in that campaign. Can you imagine? It was a Democratic race for governor, 1962. And so I ended up, actually, thanks to Bratton Davis, being the youth campaign chairman for Donald Russell for governor because of my meeting her and letting my mom and dad know that I'd met her. And from that, the family connections all came together. So even being a newspaper delivery person, I got involved in politics. And this before Republican primaries.
What do you remember about newspapering in general? Did you ever see the process or just the old newsroom or anything along those lines?
No. I was ground level, all right? I was editor of the high school paper, the Bantam, at the high school at Charleston. I was a news editor of the Ringtum Pie at Washington University, where we were right there in the print shop. And so I setting type, that's where I learned points. And so I know how to do that. And then in law school, I was the editor of the law school newspaper. And then also I cherish that the summer before I went to law school, I was an intern reporter at 134 Columbus Street with the News and Courier. So I like print media, and it serves such a vital function, and so that's why I'm glad to be here tonight.
You particularly outside of South Carolina, you are perhaps best known, and I know you've been asked about this a lot over the years, but you're perhaps best known for the incident in 2009 when you yelled "You lie" at President Obama during his joint address to Congress. He was discussing health care. It of course was a big issue in your race that year, but it's something that still to this day Democrats will run ads about in this district, and people outside of the state remember. What did you, as you reflect on that a decade now later, what did you learn from that experience? Do you regret that incident? How does it feel that it is such a memorable thing?
It was totally unintended. It was a town hall moment. And I have not had other town hall moments. Indeed, I had been briefed on the issue that day, which was U.S. taxpayers paying for free health care for illegal aliens. And I knew the issue. And so I was shocked and stated so. And then, but as a Charleston gentleman, that evening, I spoke to Rahm Emanuel, the chief of staff of the president, and we had a discussion, and I said that I apologize for the interruption. He said, we accept that apology, henceforth we discuss the issue. And so that's what I've been doing. I've been discussing issues ever since, including providing U.S. taxpayer money for illegal aliens for health care. And the issue is still, sadly, very important and wrong. And that is that all Democrats at one of the debates raised their hand and said that they would be in favor of providing free health care to illegal aliens. This is simply not right. And I stand by the issues, and I enjoy discussing issues, and that's what we'll be doing.
Have you ever crossed paths with President Obama? Has that ever come up, or have you just gone in different circles ever since then? Okay,
Skylar, I'm glad you asked. Yes, we have. Not to discuss it, but each year, each time that I went to the White House, I always had a wonderful time meeting with First Lady Michelle Obama, where we had a discussion of our shared heritage. The shared heritage is that I have family from McClellanville. She has family from Georgetown. And so my disagreements with the Obama family are not personal at all. And I don't look at politics personally. It's issues that are important.
There was one piece of legislation that you passed not too long ago. It's called the widow's tax.
Yeah. Go for it, please.
Well, no, why don't you explain it, how it got on the books, why it was necessary, and who had this logic of putting a tax on widows and such?
No, it was really unfortunate, Skylar. What it was, the widow's tax was for survivors of military service members, Gold Star wives. What happened is that they could not receive both DOD and VA benefits, and they actually were subtracted from each other. And so I'm very grateful that last year, that bill that I introduced had more co-sponsors than any other piece of legislation in this Congress, 386. It was bipartisan, and I appreciate that. And so I was able, and the way I can get legislation through is that on the Armed Services Committee, I can take legislation that I introduced and actually add it to the National Defense Authorization Act. This is a must-pass bill, and so it was such a great honor for me to be at Andrews Air Force Base when President Trump signed the National Defense Authorization Act. I was there with the Gold Star wives, wonderful people, and this is very significant. It's a $5.7 billion benefit to military families. I've been working on this particular bill, as always, for years, but the way I get legislation through is by adding it to the National Defense Authorization Act. And this summer, I was able to add some significant legislation that I am very, very grateful. One bill provided for small businesses to be able to provide cybersecurity efforts for the Department of Defense. Another bill I had provides for the modification of body armor for women serving in the military, so important to our troops who are training here at Fort Jackson. Another bill that I got through this summer, attaching it to the National Defense Authorization Act, provides for a restatement of the dedication of the United States and Israel to work together on defense issues, on research, on facing international terrorism around the world.
Right, and as you realize, our sponsor is AARP, and they have a question that's part of our series. Americans pay the highest prescription drug prices in the world. If elected, re-elected, how will you cut prescription drug prices for all Americans?
Well, hey, there's so many ways that this can be done. First of all, the federal government purchases 40% of all pharmaceuticals in our country. And so there should be a negotiation that with that much buying power to provide for a reduction of costs. I also support reimportation from other countries that we can really count on in terms of their professionalism and accuracy, and shift away from China to India, to Israel. We have a real opportunity there. Additionally, we need to expedite the changing of drugs to become generic, and whatever can be done to make the drug generic so that the cost will go down. And then additionally, I would work to, it's called a patent thicket, and that is that a company will have a patent, and then they'll make a minor change, and then that patent continues. We need to have reform of that. Additionally, I would be working, as I'm really grateful what President Trump has done for the Center for Disease Control for the National Institute of Health. He has increased funding for both of those agencies by over 30% while he's been president, which is, again, helpful as we try to develop new vaccines and new pharmaceuticals and reduce the cost.
You have also been out front on efforts to investigate these mysterious harmful waves directed at American embassies in Cuba and China. Splitting the news a little bit, but it pops in and out. Can you tell us what the latest is on that?
Well, this is, again, so tragic that we have enemies around the world that have technological capabilities, and of course it's China, it's Russia, it's Iran, and they have the ability to direct waves in such ways to affect our diplomatic personnel, and I'm on the Foreign Affairs Committee, and hey, the people of the State Department, they are so dedicated, and our embassy personnel are so dedicated, but they are subject to these attacks, and so we need to be ever vigilant, but particularly, of course, can you imagine in Cuba? No surprise, here you had a communist dictatorship, and so trying to work with them to try to figure out how this occurred is a challenge, but the bottom line is that America's got to be ever vigilant, and that's why I appreciate what President Trump has done to rebuild our military and for peace through strength.
When it comes to Cuba, there was obviously an effort, particularly during the Obama administration, to normalize relations with the Cuban government. Do you think that went too far?
It didn't work, Jamie. Come on. What happened was the people in Cuba are not free, okay? And so if they work at a resort, they're not even paid in currency. It's a typical communist situation where the people pretend to work and the government pretends to pay them. But the people are not paid in currency. They have to go to the company store. And so as tourists would come in, particularly from Western Europe, with hard currency, that went to the government. And so it was not helping the people of Cuba. And it's just one of the great tragedies that what really was probably the wealthiest country of South America now has been reduced to an impoverished, destitute, desperate situation. That's why so many hundreds of thousands, millions of Cubans have come to the United States.
On the embassies, what is the source of these so-called beams, or what have you all figured out so far, or is it still just a mystery?
It's a concentration capability of electronics, and it's being it's really not that difficult to determine what it is. It's the sad thing, Skylar, is trying to figure out who's doing it, and so and we've got to and it's not just at the embassy; it has been at residences. And so over and over again, we've got to figure out the enemies that we have around the world, which are authoritarian, totalitarian regimes that resent the success of democracy and freedom in the United States.
Well, you're a member of several defense and foreign affairs type committees. John Ratcliffe recently announced that his office no longer do in-person election security briefings to Congress. Democrats have called that just do you support this?
Well, actually, this could be helpful. And he's a former congressman from Texas, and I wish y'all could get to know him. He is a really bright guy. I think it actually is helpful to have it in writing so that it can't be misinterpreted. And so, because when we get a copy, you will get a copy right away. And so, but it can't be misinterpreted. And what happened was that when he was giving oral presentations, it was selectively and inaccurately reported what he said. And so this is a way to cover that. And that's one of the dangers that I've seen too when we have classified briefings, that frequently, the next morning, everything I saw is published. And so it's just, it's an open country, and that's part of the challenges we have.
Are you of the belief that Russia, China, foreign governments are trying to interfere in this election?
They are today. And I think it's a real danger. And particularly China with the United Front, that's a division of the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, is making every effort of disinformation in the election in the United States. And it's just beginning, but with your ability to do research and your knowledge of China too, this needs to be looked into how, what a danger this is of disinformation dividing the American people, and it needs to be addressed. And so that's a real concern I have.
Well, this began with Russia interfering with in support of the Trump president's run 4 years ago. The president does not accept that. Do you accept that?
Well, actually, no. He said that they were involved. They just didn't have an effect. And in one way, how naive these people were. They bought Twitter time or whatever in Maryland on behalf of Donald Trump. That was a waste of money. And so it was very unsophisticated efforts to affect the election. But sadly, in this election cycle, the efforts by the United Front of the Communist Party of China, CCP, is a real danger to our country.
But the president did stand up next to Vladimir Putin and say, he told me he didn't do it, and I accept the
Well,
order.
hey, just being somewhat civil, but Vladimir Putin is not a friend of freedom. And that's why I'm really proud of what the president's done. And that is, unlike the prior administration, the president has stood for the people of Ukraine by providing Javelin missiles. The prior administration provided MREs and blankets. Donald Trump provided Javelin missiles. And you say, well, what is this? Well, they destroy Russian tanks. And so, and people, I think they underestimate the aggression in Ukraine. People talk about it antiseptically. 14,000 people have been killed. And so this is not something to take lightly. And so Russian aggression, I appreciate President Trump has addressed it. And then I'm really grateful that just recently the president has been successful in placing more American troops in Poland. This is so important because the Russian Federation, Putin, finds that as an insult. It's a deterrent. I had the opportunity to meet with President Duda of Poland in New York, and I thanked him that the cooperation of the great democracy today of Poland, that they were welcoming American troops, and it had been reported at one place that he was so hopeful of having American troops, it would be called Fort Trump. But Poland, again, is so important. It was just in September 1, 1939, that the Nazis came in from the west, and the Soviet Union came in from the east to divide that country up. And then they went through 50 years of communism. But I was fortunately in Poland 2 years ago, and again, I was on Cordell Pelosi earlier today, or early this year in Gdansk. And so to see Poland, and at that time, they were the only country in Europe that has had 25 years of uninterrupted economic growth. And so Lech Walesa, who helped lead Solidarity, Freedom, Pope John Paul II, gosh, to see Poland come to life after actually almost 200 years of being a battleground. And let's go back. During World War II, of course, millions of Poles were killed, and 24,000 were massacred by the Red Army at the Katyn Forest. These were, they were media people, they were military, they were academics, but can you imagine a massacre of that level? And so, but the country of Poland now is united, it's positive, it's a member of NATO. and a strong member of NATO, and on my visits there, it's just been so inspiring to see the love and affection for the United States. And of course, it doesn't hurt that my daughter-in-law, Jennifer Miskowitz, is Polish-American, and so I have a high regard for what the Polish-American community means to the United States.
Vote on marijuana decriminalization by removing it from the Controlled Substance Act. States would then be free to pass their own laws on marijuana. In the House, would plan to vote support this?
I wouldn't. My view is that marijuana is a gateway drug. According to law enforcement that I've spoken with, people begin with marijuana and then they go on to other drugs that are fatal. The horror that we have everywhere of drug overdose and young people losing their lives. I want to do all we can to avoid the potential for drug overdose and people losing their lives.
5% sales tax on pot sales, though, that's a cash cow. So
No. Hey, people's lives are worth more, Skylar, truly, than the 5%.
You looked at other states. I mean, they seem to be managing okay with it.
Well, hey, I local law enforcement, I trust, and it's a gateway drug that leads, sadly, to more intense drugs that lead, sadly, to overdose and death.
Do you believe that even when it comes to medical issues? Because, a lot of supporters of medical marijuana will point out that actually the drugs that they would be getting prescribed instead are more dangerous. I mean, you end up using opioids instead of marijuana when you could actually be using less dangerous drugs.
I would be open-minded in regard to how medical marijuana use, but I need to be convinced that it couldn't be abused again, where the horror, because I've seen it, the horror of talented young people who have lost their lives because they started on marijuana and lost control of their lives, and it's just a horror that I want to do all that we can to make sure it doesn't occur.
The big news in the district recently, and you were involved in the press conference announcing this, was the deal between your son, Attorney General Alan Wilson, and the federal government to remove 9.5 metric tons of plutonium from the Savannah River site. But it would take about 16 years to do it, 16 to 20 more years. The state would get $600 million for it, 75 million of which will go to the lawyers who helped negotiate it. There was some criticism of it from another statewide Republican elected official, Governor McMaster, who both said that the timeline he felt was too long to continue leaving it there for that long, and that the amount that was going to the lawyers was too much of a payday for them. What did you make of, obviously you supported it because you were there. What did you make of his criticism?
Well, first of all, I can tell where we agree. And that is Attorney General Alan Wilson and myself have agreed that the attorney's fees are high. Okay, they're high because this was the largest settlement in the history of South Carolina. And so that's the reason they were high. In regard to the removal of the plutonium and how long it takes, Secretary Brouillette clearly explained that you just don't move weapons-grade plutonium or plutonium, that it takes like 1.5 years to move a ton. And you just don't put it in the back of a U-Haul and take it to Los Alamos. And so, and even better, this is not a situation of a potential pledge. This is a commitment that's been made. This is a contract that's been made to remove the plutonium. And Savannah Riverside's special to me. I'm the only member of Congress who actually worked there. And so I know the 11,000 people who work there, how dedicated they are, and the tremendous progress we've had on environmental cleanup. We now have additional funding in the National Defense Authorization Act for H Canyon. I'm grateful that we have the agreement for pit production with the NNSA. Administrator Lisa Gordon Haggerty visited last month to confirm that efforts will be made to have pits, plutonium pits, to provide for the nuclear triad, which is so important as a deterrent. The stronger our military, the more capable our military, obviously the less likely it will be used.
Refresh my memory. Where did you work at SRS? What was your job?
I was a personnel security hearing officer, and I was.
What does that mean?
Well, there were security clearances, and people would have their security clearance withdrawn. The reason for that, I am so honored. I was Deputy General Counsel for Governor Jim Edwards when he was the Secretary of Energy in Washington, and so 81, 82, I worked in the Reagan administration, and it was just such an uplifting experience, and then I came back to resume my private practice.
You know, obviously the crux of what, at the bottom line of what Governor Master was saying is that even after all of these years of negotiating this deal, we should have held out for a better one. Do you think that a better deal was possible than this?
I really think it was extraordinary. This is the largest in history, it's been achieved, and I'm really proud of Alan Wilson. All right, he worked on this tirelessly. The law firm was very proactive and actually ingenious in how they acted, because actually other lawsuits had failed, and over and over again. And so this is a real achievement. And then I'm really hopeful with the money raised that much of it will be used in the affected counties, and that is Barnwell and Aiken and Allendale. For example, broadband itself could be paid for by the funding there. And then I'm also very pleased that the legislative delegations that represent those counties are superstars. And so, and hey, it's going to be arm wrestling in the General Assembly when you throw up $600 million that attracts a crowd. And so, but I have faith in the delegations of Aiken and Barnwell and Allendale.
Your opponent has criticized you for only having gotten one bill enacted in law during your time in office. Why has it been so difficult? And the pipeline that you can tell us about that's on the verge of becoming law.
Well, Skylar, indeed, as I indicated, I've had many bills passed, and they are attached to the National Defense Authorization Act. The widow's tax, $5.7 billion for military families. The other legislation I mentioned to you, also in the National Defense Authorization Act, every year I have provisions for the Savannah River site in particular, and also for projects at Fort Jackson. And so over and over again, I've been successful in that. And then I'm also grateful that thanks to the veteran service organizations, I have been a lead on protecting Tricare, which is the military insurance program, medical program. Over the years, there have been efforts to restrict that program. And with the research done by veteran service organizations, I've been successful in making sure that there were no fee increases, there were no increase in deductibilities. Over and over again, I've been a legislative activist, and hey, I want to give credit. I've got a wonderful staff. They're dedicated, but the people who really deserve the credit are my constituents. So much of what has been brought to me, obviously, is brought to me, such as the Gold Star wives, and brought to my attention, and then working together and bipartisan. You don't hear about this, and a friend of mine, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, and she points out that good news has no feet and bad news has wings. And so I work together with many Democrats, and we have a very good relationship. We just disagree on the issues.
What does that say about the process then if getting legislation passed doesn't work? I mean, it's who you know, what backs you scratch. I mean, it's kind of a myth that getting a bill passed means anything.
No, it can be done, and you introduce the bill, and you just hope that it can have legs, that you pick up co-sponsors. Again, I was so thrilled and honored, to have 386 co-sponsors for the axing the widow tax, and but you just don't give up. You just keep pressing ahead, and this was not a new bill for me. I've been introducing it and reintroducing it, adding co-sponsors every time. Again, the veteran service organizations have made such a difference, whether it be the American Legion, VFW, DAV, MOA, ROA, all these different organizations have been very, very helpful in coming together to help me have additional support.
Last week, The Atlantic reported that Trump has privately referred to fallen American soldiers, as losers and suckers. And that he once said to his former chief of staff, John Kelly, while they were visiting his son's grave, "I don't get it. What's in it for them?" Trump has disputed this particular story, but there are plenty of other instances that are beyond dispute because they happened in public, like when he said during the 2016 campaign that John McCain was not a war hero because, quote, "I like people who weren't captured," or when he criticized a Gold Star family for not supporting him. Do you think that this president has the appropriate level of respect for our troops and appreciates why they do what they do?
Hey, of course he does. My gosh. And the Atlantic article, I knew that that wasn't true the second I heard it. I also knew it was a reflection of the Trump derangement syndrome, that some people are so filled with hatred, they will make up anything. And the way that I know that that wasn't true is that any person who's been to the cemetery here at Fort Jackson, who's been to Arlington, any American who's been to Normandy or Luxembourg, when you go to such a cemetery, you are just filled with gratitude and love and affection for the people who have given their lives. It's inconceivable that a human would say something like that. And so I find it reprehensible. Plus, it didn't surprise me that it was anonymous. And then additionally, it didn't surprise me, it was 2 years old. The president loves our military, and he's rebuilt the military. That on the Armed Services Committee, that's what he promised to do. Promises made, promises kept, to rebuild our military. In fact, we're going to see on Friday that the president will be giving the Congressional Medal of Honor to Sergeant Thomas Paine from Batesburg-Leesville, from Lugoff. And it will be so clear his love and affection and appreciation of our military. And as a military family, I'm grateful. Alan served for a year, field artillery in Iraq. Addison was a doctor, orthopedic surgeon in the Navy in Baghdad. Julian served signal in Egypt. And Hunter served for a year in Afghanistan as an engineer. I know as a military family, and I know as a 31-year veteran myself, that President Trump loves and appreciates our military, and things are being taken out of context that don't relate at all to his love and affection for the American military.
You were friends with John McCain.
Yes.
You know, Senator Graham was, of course, very, very close with John McCain. I mean, he's really said some very aggressive things about him, even after he passed.
Well, and I disagreed, and I campaigned across the Southeast with John McCain. So it's not, but that's
do you push back against those?
Hey, that's the heat of a campaign, but the truth is indeed that Donald Trump loves and appreciates our military. He understands that our freedoms are maintained with rising enemies around the world, more important than ever to appreciate our military, and Donald Trump appreciates the military.
Follow up to that too. The president famously was here in South Carolina when he called the coronavirus a Democrats' hoax. Close to 200,000 dead, 6 months later. How would you rate his handling of this that he was in denial about, and it was not even featured during the Republican convention at all, what the president's achievement was?
Oh, it was.
in combating it?
Dr. Galen did present during the convention.
One speaker out of 40.
Well, hey, you needed a doctor to do it. He did it. And the very first public official to do something significant about coronavirus was Donald Trump. And it took courage, and that was to block travel from China. That was incredible. And then any comments that he made, sadly, the Chinese Communist Party concealed how dangerous this was. And beginning in Wuhan, the doctor who revealed this is dead. The other whistleblowers who brought this to the attention are not to be discovered. But there was misinformation, and then sadly, the corruption of the World Health Organization. And so for the president to be receiving false information, it came from the Chinese Communist Party. But he took action right away, and I appreciated that immediately, instead of new government programs, he immediately pointed out that we needed to be working with local pharmacies, food stores, trucking companies, that we needed to understand right away that it didn't take more government programs to address the issue. And then I really appreciate that he immediately, with PPE and with ventilators, showed how bipartisan he was by building a hospital, sending a hospital to New York City, and also to Los Angeles. And I like too that he's accused of trying to assume too much power. The exact opposite. He provided for the delegation of power to governors and mayors. That's where it should be. And because the differences between our states, even our communities, are so significantly back to local government. And I just thought that was so impressive, because it's really offensive to me when people accuse him of trying to be authoritarian. An authoritarian would not delegate so much power to states and local government. And so I appreciate what he's done, and the success, again, of barring travel from China. That was an amazing effort. And we all know he took extraordinary, bizarre, crazy criticism for that, but he was right.
Let me ask you this. What year did you go to Congress?
I was elected December 18th, 2001, and I was sworn in the next day, December the 19th, 2001.
A lot of your points of references this afternoon have been around the Cold War.
Yes.
How do you make someone who is in that 18 to 25 to 30-year-old category think you're the better candidate if you're rooted in decades ago? Why would, if I were 18 now, would I support you or your opponent?
Well, because I was, when I was 18, we were told communism was the way of the future, that our grandchildren would be living under communism. And I saw, with the power of Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher, Pope John Paul II, I saw the power of defeating totalitarianism. And so today, I want to inspire young people that what I was told that just couldn't occur, it can, and that is that we can fight back against Islamic terrorism. We can succeed against the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, and their promotion of authoritarianism. We can succeed in pushing back against Putin, his aggression in Ukraine and Moldova, and also in Republic of Georgia. And so it's based on my experience that I'm an optimist.
Back to the pandemic for a minute. There has not been a relief package in quite a few months now at this point. Negotiations on Capitol Hill have been stalled. The House Democrats did pass a bill a few months ago, the HEROES Act. You and all the Republicans voted against it. What did you think was wrong with it?
Well, $3.5 trillion. And then you need it had everything. It was a parade of errors and everything under the sun, but it didn't relate to the coronavirus. And I sadly believe the reason they passed it was so that it wouldn't ever become law. And so that they would be able in the campaign to say, look, this president, he just can't do anything. And so I don't like it. But the president did, with executive orders, he went around them. And he, by providing for unemployment insurance, for forbearance on student loans, for providing for additional benefits, again, I would prefer that he not use executive orders, but he did this because he wants to help the American people, and we need really to work together. I was hoping that the Senate that goes back this week, that there could be legislation, particularly to extend PPP, the Payroll Protection Program, which has been so successful. And maintaining jobs, and then the recovery that the president's been able to lead. In the last 4 months, 10.3 million jobs have been restored. That was never anticipated. And so over and over again, the president understands we still have a higher level of unemployment than we should. And gosh, when I think back to February 28th, I was in Charleston with the president. On that day, we had the lowest level of unemployment in history for African Americans, the lowest level of unemployment for Hispanics, for Asian Americans, for women. The success of the tax cuts that the president put into place is unparalleled, the strongest economy we ever had. And then sadly, along came the virus. And so now the person to recover the economy is no question, it should be Donald Trump. He has the experience of having built it, and now he can rebuild it and provide jobs and opportunities for the American people.
All right, we're going to have to wrap up here because we are up against the wall. I want to do a couple things here. First, I want to say thank you to Steel Hands Brewing for having us. An excellent host. We very much appreciate it. We also want to remind everyone that we have 2 more Pints and Politics coming on October 7th with Jamie Harrison. It will be here in the Columbia area. And October the 8th, we are going to do it with Joe Cunningham, our congressman from Charleston, Democrat, and we will be doing that down in the Charleston area. So right now, we're going to follow up here and close the night out with our speed round.
Look, before we get to speed round, let me just ask you one thing real quick that you could take a little bit longer if you want, but it's a fairly quick question. I think we mentioned that you've been in office since 2001. I think you're 73 years old now.
Yes, yes.
How much longer do you hope to be in office?
It depends on my health and my effectiveness. And so I would not say any longer unless I can be fully effective. Hey, I want to say something about Steel Hands. This is a special place to our family. My youngest son, Hunter, and his fiancee, Julianne, had their engagement party here at Steel Hands. Also, this is unique. People need to know this, particularly in the Holy City. And that is that this location was a wasteland. We're in the shadow of a steel company. This property had zero value, but they built this brewery, and I was here last year to come by and thank them and thank the jobs that were created. And now the city of Casey, I'm really grateful. This whole community is popping up with new jobs because of this wasteland that's been made into one of the most beautiful breweries in South Carolina.
Let me just ask you one more thing. The first vote you'll have if you're reelected is for Speaker of the House.
Yes.
If the Republicans reclaim the majority, one would imagine that Kevin McCarthy, who's the minority leader now, would be seeking that post. Would you vote for Kevin McCarthy for Speaker?
I would absolutely vote for Kevin McCarthy. I'm so proud of his service and his standing up for the people of the United States. Kevin McCarthy is a person of vision. He really will try to reach across the aisle because we should, in so many cases, be working together, bipartisan, and he has a record of doing that. And so Kevin McCarthy would be an excellent speaker.
All right, good. All right, this is our very quick questions. We're in a pub. Are you a beer drinker? And if so, what types do you favor, or do you have a specific flavor you like?
Well, hey, we're here. Yes, I'm a 2-beer drinker, and limit, and Steel Hands comes to mind.
What was the last book that you read, or a favorite book you've recently read?
Well, hey, Jamie, you're gonna love this. In lieu of reading books, I subscribe to 5 daily newspapers. Okay, I did subscribe to 8, but some have disappeared, and I also subscribe to about 7 or 8 weekly newspapers. And so, in lieu of reading books, I enjoy reading newspapers. I particularly enjoy reading about constituents who do positive things. During the virus, to see so many businesses come to life and produce hand sanitizer, people like Lou Kennedy with Nephron, over and over again, you read John and Venetia Sharp, who are right on the corner here. They have a brewery. They have very good peach wine, but they also now make hand sanitizer. And so I'm a newspaper reader.
Who is your favorite Democratic president not named Harry Truman?
My goodness, not named Harry Truman, a Democratic president. Gosh, you've really got me there.
I knew who your Republican would be.
No.
Who would be your Democratic pick?
I respect, lightning so strike, FDR. He was in office during the Depression and led our country, and then he led our country ably during World War II. I disagree with the growth of government that occurred, but I would respect very much his success in uniting the American people to defeat fascism in Italy and Nazism in Germany.
All right, and the last one, mustard or vinegar-based or tomato-based barbecue.
Hey, as a resident of the Midlands, it occurs to me, Sheely's mustard.
There you go.
And so, hey, and I know we can fuss with those people in the over in the PD. They like vinegar, and then you have to be careful with folks upstate. It's appalling. They use ketchup, but hey, and I enjoy campaigning, and I have to really watch it because campaigning to me is from one barbecue house to another, shaking hands, and that's one of the sad things about the virus, the inability to be with the public as much as I like to be, but I'm just so hopeful that a vaccine will be developed and that we can resume creating jobs, creating opportunities, as did occur right up through February 28th.
Thank you, Congressman.
Thank you.
Thank
Honored
you
to be
very
with
much.
y'all.
Yeah,
Thank you.
The Post and Courier is extremely focused on journalism that makes a difference, that has an impact, and that not only is covering what is happening here in the State House, but is looking out for our readers and citizens of the state as lawmakers make decisions that influence their lives.